We usually do a Thursday night football recap, but seeing how COVID fucked everything up, I guess we can do a Tuesday night football recap, even though it's a couple days late. Tuesday, the Bills played the Titans. Um, Not really what we expected from the Buffalo Bills, considering their first few games where they were just an offensive powerhouse. They seem to have gotten shut down. I think they only put up 16 points. Is is this what you expected to happen, or did you think they were going to put up more of a fight?
I don't want to say I expect this to happen because of the Titans not practicing for 2 weeks. I don't know how much you heard Jay Feely said that, but Jay Feely during the game said that after every fourth down run or a 4 yard run, he was just like, "Wow, I didn't expect this from a team that didn't practice in 2 weeks." But anyway,
Yeah. I also heard the fact that Ryan Tannehill ran in a park
yeah,
about
to keep
30
his ankles
times.
warm or whatever the fuck he was talking about every goddamn fucking time. Anyway, I digress. I expected a good game, even though they were coming off that hiatus, but I didn't expect them to get blown out. And I said earlier before that, Josh Allen has been playing well and credit where credit's due, but he hasn't been tested. And people are looking at the Rams game um, and the Raiders game as, I guess, tests, quote unquote. But really, they're middle of the park defenses, middle of the park teams. To be honest, if you look at who the Rams beat and who um, the Raiders beat, I mean, I guess you could say Raiders beat the Chiefs just now, yeah, and then the New Orleans Saints. But it looks like they got them on bad days. But who knows? I mean, that could be the Raiders are just a good team. But anyway, so this was his really, I guess, his first test to a decent defense, a good defense, and he regressed to the mean. I mean, his first interception wasn't his fault. It was thrown a little bit behind, but bounced off the guy. That second interception, I don't know. I mean, of course, we don't know whose fault it actually was because maybe it was a read the wide receiver didn't see. It was a read the quarterback didn't see, but it looked like Josh Allen read whatever the hell he read wrong and threw it right to Malcolm Butler. And when you saw him on the sideline, he was shaking his head, super pissed, as if he did wrong, not somebody else. But a lot of people are saying that it was the receiver's fault. So bullshit. I don't know. Regardless, it was a bad pick, and they just looked overall. Their defense looked absolutely atrocious. Obviously, everyone saw what happened to Josh Norman getting thrown out of the stadium, and um, it was their first test against a good team, and they didn't live up to it. So I don't know.
Earl Thomas is probably the happiest guy in the world right now because the memes of him becoming a lead blocker for Derrick Henry are finally dying down as Josh Norman becomes an internet meme. Yeah, like you said, Josh Allen. Yeah, that first interception was, it was uh, dropped by the receiver and was picked off. The second one, though, yeah, I mean, it really looked like it was Josh Allen's fault. As much as people want to try to defend him, I don't know if you didn't see Malcolm Butler, but Malcolm Butler got a clear break on that ball and intercepted it. Unless underneath receiver ran too deep, causing it, Butler to drop back or something. That was, very Josh Allen's fault. And I think, you mentioned before how his mechanics have improved. I think his mechanics have improved when he has time to throw. I think once he gets rushed and gets pressured, starts to get flustered, and just all those new learned mechanics go out the window, and he goes back to relying on his arm solely. So I think maybe pressuring Josh Allen is really the answer, and you could almost see it in the second half of that Rams game when they started breaking through, and they got a couple sacks on him, rushed them, forced a fumble, but you can see when the Rams were starting to bring the pressure that Josh Allen started to regress. So, not saying that is the answer, but that seems to be kind of what he's headed towards is throwing those mechanics out of the window and going back to old
Yeah,
Josh
I mean that
Allen.
happens with any quarterback. That's why whenever quarterbacks come out and they're like they have a long throwing motion or whatever the hell it is, typically those guys they're not going to fix their throwing motion. When you pick up a football, you start throwing over time and you develop it and it's solidified. That's what your throwing motion. Because what happens is, for instance, like you said, when you get pressured, I mean, your body is your body, right? There's neurotransmitters. I don't want to get too scientific here, but that's what causes you to throw the way you throw. And when you're under pressure, you don't go because, for instance, obviously when you're practicing, there's no pressure. You can go through, you could step perfectly, you could rotate your hips perfectly, you can do all that perfectly. But the moment you're in a game, there's pressure around you, you forget all that shit. You're trying to get the ball out, and you do it how you feel naturally, and you do it the way you learned how to do it, not the new way you just learned over a course of 3 years, of 2 years, or whatever. When I look back, Blake Bortles, for instance, he came out with a really bad throwing mission, and he never fixed it. That one season he played with that 2017 season, he had a quicker release and a more clean throwing motion, but that was when things were going right. The moment games got heavy and he was under pressure, he was back to looking like a fucking hieroglyphic, whatever the hell that thing was, whatever that meme was, where he like flipped the ball underneath and he like windmilled the passes. Like that's, I mean, and at the end of the day, it's like he's going to always regress to that until, like you said, if the pocket's clean and all that, then he has time. It feels like practice. But when it's a game situation, these people flying around him, there's no way that 10 out of 10 times you're going to have that perfect pass or that perfect rotation and stuff like that. And that's where his fault is. I don't the game. I mean, the game definitely wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
Why they
Yeah.
lost. I mean, the Titans had 3 scoring drives. I think all in the Bills' territory. I think all of them like 30 yards
Right.
long.
But I mean, two of those were
Because
because
of
of his interceptions.
right, because of the turnovers and then that fumble or whatever. So he was. I don't think he was like the reason they lost, but he definitely kind of looked like the old Josh Allen for at least that game.
Yeah.
So we'll see. He's going to be again tested by the Chiefs coming up, but he did not look good. And I know a lot of people are going to give him excuses and this and that. And I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback because of this one game, but for that one game, he did not look good. Because a lot of people are like, oh, what about Lamar Jackson? Like, he looked like shit against Kansas City. Everyone's giving him excuses. Like, no, he looked like shit against Kansas City. And I think people will say he looked like shit against Kansas City, but he didn't look like shit against his other teams. So we're going to evaluate him as an overall, but we can't deny he looked like shit just because he did look like shit. So same thing with Josh Allen. He looked like shit, and we're going to say he looks like shit unless he doesn't. So not that he's a shit quarterback overall, but for that game,
Yeah,
he did
it
not
was
look
bad.
good.
And actually, just thinking right now, I'm reminded when he was playing Miami, and he threw a pass to Stephon Diggs off of his back foot, and people are just like, "Oh my God, what a great pass by Josh Allen!" But if you look at it, like Diggs made a great move on Noah Igbinoghene, and then he made a great catch on the sideline. So he kind of got saved by Diggs' great route running, and if that was a good corner, not a rookie corner, that wouldn't have probably been a good pass. People would have been like, why is this guy throwing it off his back foot, to a covered receiver? So I think him having good teammates around, having great receiving core, great offensive line is what's causing him to be as good as he is. But, I don't know that much about football and the details of, his mechanics and all of that to really make a call on it. And like you said, this is one bad game. This doesn't mean that Josh Allen just is shit now for the rest of the year. Um, but I want to touch on the other side too. You saw Josh Norman get embarrassed, but I think that's the least of the Buffalo Bills' problems because their defense seems to be falling apart almost. I don't know if Matt Milano was back in this game. I know they've had injuries. Both Tre'Davious White and Wallace were out, and the cornerbacks. Is that defense kind of falling apart, do you think? Or do you think just the injuries are what's keeping them? Because they've allowed quite a few points. They've allowed the Rams almost to come back, and then this game too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't watched enough Bills games to kind of get an idea of how their defense is playing. But last year it was an obvious strength. They were one of the best defenses in the league, if not the best defense in the league. And there's been injuries and on this for this year. And with defenses, it's tough because sometimes once you figure it out, you have to adjust. And once you figure it out, you're figured out. Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe it's the combination of both, but they have not looked good at all. And it'll be definitely interesting to see if their defense plays as bad as they've been playing throughout the season, if Josh Allen can, carry them to the playoffs with, a shit defense or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be. Well, did you want to talk about the Titans at all, or
No, fuck them.
talk about Ryan Tannehill's
Tarek is
Air Jordan attempt?
Yeah, dude, when
Yeah.
that happened, like, I noticed it, at least. I don't know if all like players did, but everyone felt that in their knee, like, oh my god, like that 100%. And the best part was like he was laughing and whatever, and I don't know how many people noticed, but I remember the day after a lot of people were talking about it. But yeah, when it happened, I was like, dude, imagine if he tore his ACL in that stupid ass celebration.
Oh, I know. It reminds me of I forgot who it was a defensive lineman that like celebrated, like jumped up and I don't know, did something and then landed on his ACL after getting a sack and just like
Yeah.
or
I
landed
want to
in-
say it was like
yeah, just like
I want to say someone from the Bears or something like that.
yeah,
I feel like that
think
sounds
so.
familiar. Yeah, he was like celebrating and was like geeked and then fucking tore his shit. That's gotta be the worst, man. It literally makes you afraid to like celebrate for the rest of the season, I'd imagine.
I know. Reminds me too. I think it was Gus Farrat that like headbutted the wall
Got
or
a
something.
concussion,
Gave himself a
yeah.
concussion.
Or was it Grammatica too, right? He like kicked the game winner or some shit. and,
Oh
like,
yeah.
He like did like a chest bump and fucking his knee blew out. Yeah, man. Tough luck.
Thank you for listening in to this clip of the Moose Bros podcast. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment below, and subscribe to this channel to see more clips just like this one. If you want to listen to the whole podcast, you can find us at Spotify or Apple Podcasts under Moose Bros Sports.